Hello and welcome to the Mite Beekeeping Podcast. I'm Bruce Rodriguez. Today's episode, I have a conversation with somebody that I recently met on Facebook. Her name's Casie Berkhouse, and she's a beekeeper from Northeast Pennsylvania, my home state. This recording is about an hour, and I don't edit very much. And by very much, I mean at all. This recording kind of in the playback sounds like we're cutting each other off and interrupting each other, but that really isn't what happened. It's just for some reason the way this worked out, and I don't know how to fix it. So I hope you guys like this anyway. And if you have any comments, any feedback, you love it, you hate it, you know where to find me. You can come on to the Mite Bomb Beekeeping Facebook page, leave me a nice hateful comment or whatever you got, and enjoy this episode with me and Casie Berkhouse. Hello, Casie.
Hi, Bruce.
Hi, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Okay, I never really know how to start these things out. Um, Usually everybody tells their guest, "Oh, tell us about how you got into bees and what your deal is and all that kind of thing." And for my listeners, this is the first time I've ever spoken to Casie. We don't know each other. We just got into a little conversation on Facebook, and I thought, let's just talk about bees on the podcast. So just tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you said that you are into biology, or maybe you have a degree in biology. I'm not sure.
Well, I'm actually a biology instructor at a college, and I also teach beekeeping. I'd love to regale you in the story of how my friendship and love started of bees.
Okay, that's fine. Let's do it. What you got?
Um, my grandmother kept bees when I was younger, and she was always a hands on sort of grandmother. So I was definitely allowed to run the smoker. But aside from that, the relationship with the bees that I had when I'd step into her very small apiary was moot. It seemed like any other insect to me until one day I was sitting in the grass in the same spot, meaning in her yard, and a stopped and it just kind of had a chat with me. It was one of the most bizarre things that I still to this day have experienced, because it wasn't a conversation like you and I are having now, where if we were in person, we'd be looking in each other's eyes and body language and using words. But I certainly communicated with that carpenter bee that day. And then from that day forward, I sort of sought out different kinds of bees because of that interaction. And then over time into my teenage years, I finally started feeling some sort of way and a difference when I was around honeybees. So it was a communication, an open communication that bees started. And that might sound kind of crazy, but from what I understand, I'm talking to the right guy for that.
Mm, I don't know. I don't know, but I mean, I love bees. I mean, I
Me
don't
too.
communicate with bees. I mean, I like all bugs. I love wasps. I love ants. I think they're really cool. They rival honeybees to me. I mean, all bugs really, but I definitely don't do communicating. I mean, I don't feel like I communicate with bees, or that they've communicated to me, except for the obvious ones when they're wanting to sting you, come out at you. But
For
um,
sure.
but I mean, that's interesting. When you first said carpenter, I thought you were talking about a person, and I didn't hear carpenter bee. Um,
No, carpenter bee and bumblebees are my favorite. I actually have a bumblebee tattooed on the back of my neck.
Bumblebees, yeah, they're cool too. I have very bad luck with those. Whenever I try to relocate them, they always seem to die pretty soon afterward. I think they're pretty much they get one shot. Where they move into, that's where they're gonna live. And if you try to dig them up and remove them, it just doesn't work. Um,
Same thing with ants. You can't do that with ants either.
um, well, ants, yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of ant farms, and they do a little better than bumblebees. Bumblebees just do terribly. But I mean, some people can take an ant queen and start a whole colony, just from that.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. For
So,
some reason, I'm not as interested or excited about communicating and having that open relationship with ants or other bugs or insects as I am with bees of all sorts. Seriously, if they're in my home, then we've got a problem. But if a bee is in my home, I will welcome her, give her honey, and send her about her merry way.
Okay, so how long have you had bees for, that you take care
I'm
of your
sorry,
own?
one more time.
How many seasons have you been
Well, I would have to
beekeeping?
look into history to get an exact number, but currently I hold two apiaries, one professional and one personal, and I'm about to have a third on my own property. And this would be season for these bees, season 4. But I've had bees other times in my life and separate apiaries as well.
Okay, I mean, I was just curious. For full disclosure, you first contacted me about talking on a Zoom meeting with a Facebook group called, what are they called? Reasonably
Okay.
Treatment Free
This was my
is the
own
group.
personal group
Um,
that I wanted you to speak with originally. And
oh, okay.
I searched for someone who was doing treatment free beekeeping because, as an instructor, it's important to me to show
Mm-hmm.
as many different styles as I can. And I would love to be a treatment free beekeeper myself, but I've not been able to successfully do that in our locale, which is about the same area as you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's delve into that a little bit. Why do you think you're not successful? Where do
Um,
you get your bees
I don't
from?
choose to get them from a different location. And for the past maybe 3 years, I've been looking at Russian genetics. And I was supposed to travel to Des Moines, Iowa this year to get a pure Russian, or rather 6 pure Russian nukes. And COVID definitely stopped that fun little adventure. So this year I got beef from North Carolina, which I don't ever choose to buy bees from a different climate. But I got them from Carniolans from North Carolina, and then I requeened with 6 Russian, pure Russian queens.
Man, you just opened
No,
up
right.
about 5 cans of worms that would take me all day to scream about. Russian bees and buying bees. Yeah, pure bees. I mean, they're all kind of just things that I don't even get into. Do you ever try to catch bees?
I've caught
Just
freebies
get
before,
freebies.
and that's actually what brought me into beekeeping where I'm at now, because I'm quite the adventurer. I like to travel around and see where I belong, and I it took me a long time to realize I belonged here. So this is where I decided to set up apiaries, and I caught my first swarm alone in October of 2018. And I have to say, I felt like a badass.
Yeah, it makes you pretty bad when you can do that. I, you told me where you live recently, which you don't have to say, but it's not far from me. But it's just far enough that I don't want to go that far to get swarms. And I probably got 10 swarm calls from your exact location where you live, and I just
Oh, wow.
didn't know
Now you
anybody
have my
there.
number.
So I told them just and I got you. Now I would just tell them, Google somebody else
Just
or
feel free to
something,
give them
because
my cell phone number.
um
Absolutely. Won't put it on here for the whole
yeah
world, but if someone calls you for a swarm in my area, I'm definitely down.
yeah. None of my friends buy bees. They don't have to. If they do, they're silly. But they should just give me the money. Um, but yeah, I get swarm calls up there. So there's a lot of bees up there in your area. So as a biology instructor or professor, um, you have to be pretty familiar with how selection works. What's the difference between evolution and selection?
Well, of course.
You're
And
familiar with all that, right?
selection actually is what causes evolution.
Exactly. Yeah, people will say, you can't select for mite tolerance or surviving bees because evolution takes forever. And it's like you're comparing the big thing with just the
And
part of the thing.
would you like to know why I want the Russian bees? Because I like the accents.
Sure. Yeah, there you go. So you're supposed to be laughing at my jokes. Um, but yeah, the Russian, I hear about them all the time. From what I've studied about them, they think they have pure Russian bees somewhere because they're secluded, but they're in the continental United States, so I don't know how that's possible unless you know
Correct.
every
It's like
square
calling
inch
honey
of a
organic.
place. Yeah, or organic. I mean, in the continental United States. I know it's possible in other places,
Right,
but
for
that's a
sure.
whole different other can of worms. And then also they're selecting by just mite counts. They're not selecting on pure survival. The only way you're going to get selection for survival is if you let bees not survive
Right.
and keep the ones that do. So all the mite counting and you could be counting
Yeah,
mites
for
all day and
sure.
your bees die of something else. Or they could have a ton of mites and live, which I'm going to find out. I have a colony with 52 mite count, with a 52 mite count, not even done by me, done by a professional mite counter inspector, that I'm going to see what happens. And they're still strong as
I will
hell,
have
so
to
we'll see what happens.
Following you for that information. I am certainly interested in a 52 mite count. The highest one I've ever had is 12. Obviously.
That's
Wow.
child's play. Yeah, 52. I even have it on video and everything.
Yeah, that would be
maybe
great.
I'll show you that one.
So, what I really was interested in here, I really wanted to know why someone chooses treatment free and what that means. You literally just not check your bees and let them go, or you still check on them and treat somehow. I'm really interested in what this looks like because I'm a very hands-on beekeeper. That doesn't mean I open my hives often. It means that my eyes are on my hives often.
Okay. So I hate starting sentences with so, and I hate when people do it, and I just did it. Not treating bees. The way I mess with bees is nothing different from the way someone would have kept bees in maybe the 50s or the 60s. I don't know. I wasn't alive then, but I know there were no varroa mites then. I still inspect my colonies. I make sure they have enough room. I make splits. I harvest honey. I do everything that a normal beekeeper would have done then. I just don't treat bees at all. I mean, that's how I do it. I see who lives and who dies, and I've had some really good years. I can't even say good or bad because to me, a bunch of bees dying is not a bad thing. I'm selecting for survival. Bees have to die to select for survival. There's really not much different. Some people do think they like to. I mean, it's not the way you did it, but usually what I hear some people, that's kind of like a little stab at us. Oh, well, if I just want to be treatment free, I'll just sit back and meditate in front of my hives and never
That
open
sounds
them,
beautiful to
or,
me.
some silly stuff like that. Yeah, well, maybe it does, but yeah, I don't meditate. I don't do anything like that. I inspect my colonies. I feed. I just don't do treatments. For me, it's pretty easy to understand. And then what was the second thing that you said? You said first, do I not go through them, which I do.
I asked what
then
makes you want to be a treatment-free beekeeper as opposed to treating anything.
Oh, okay. Well, when I first got into bees, when I decided I'm gonna have bees, I didn't even know what treatments were because the only thing I knew about them was what I read in the library in my city, and the very newest book they had was from probably the 1950s. So I was reading books from early 1900 to the 1950s and 60s. I just had, and that's what I said, oh, okay, this is cool. I'm going to keep bees. And I got some bees, and that's what I did. I didn't even know anything about mites. I didn't even know about them until the next season when someone when someone finally said, "What are you doing about mites?" I had no clue what they were talking about. And then when I heard of everything you had to do, I knew just from always being interested in evolution and selection that it would seem silly, and I didn't want to do it. I just wasn't going to do it. And then I learned about how there were other pests in the bee world that aren't treated for anymore. Tracheal mites is the big one. Even hive beetles, when they first came in, really caused a lot of havoc. And now they're still paying for, I guess, southern
Right.
beekeepers,
We are
but
very
not
fortunate
up
to
here.
skirt that.
And yeah, and I'm so glad I didn't, because I know that bees can live without them. I mean, I do enough removals every year. I monitor enough feral colonies every single spring to see that they're still alive. And yes, mites do kill colonies, but they're going to. They're going to, and there's still plenty of bees everywhere. So I don't even worry about it. Bees. The thing is, bees are not in. Honeybees aren't endangered. We have millions of colonies. So I don't know why we're fighting this battle for them, unless you're a commercial beekeeper and that's how you put your food on the table. You need to sell bees, and there's plenty of people there to buy them. So you got to keep as many alive so you can make as much money as you can. I'm not in that position, so I don't really worry about that. So will you currently treat
Unfortunately,
your bees?
yes.
Well, see how you just said that? I hear that a lot. Anytime you ask someone if they treat their bees, they're never really proud of it. There's always some sense of
Or
like
guilt,
regret
of
when they talk
course.
about it. And yeah, and I just heard that in you. And you're a biology instructor. You know
Right.
how selection works. You Someone asked during a Samuel Ramsey Zoom that I was just watching a couple days ago if treating is the holding pattern until bees figure this stuff out. And I almost laughed so hard. It was just so ridiculous that people think that they can treat until the bees figure it out. What does that mean when someone
Well,
says
it
something like that to
kind of
you?
conjures an image of the movie Iron Man and a bee, and the way that Tony Stark calls all of his parts to him. I imagine a worker bee just making the move that Tony Stark moves, and then that Tony Stark makes, and then all of this equipment flies onto the bee, and the varroa just poofs into midair, and the vision ends. Some beautiful scene of a broken down beehive smoking from the rear somewhere. That's what it means to me.
Okay, I have no clue
I
what
guess
any
you
of
have to
that
be an
meant.
Iron Man fan or have a 12-year-old like I do.
But yeah, I have the 12-year-old, yeah, but I'm not an Iron Man fan, but just think about it for a second. Someone actually thinks that treating is a way of you can treat until the bees figure it out. It's kind of like it's never going to happen. It's like if you I thought of this the other day. It might be stupid, but let's say you cook a turkey at 400 degrees for 2 hours. You can't cook a turkey at 100 degrees for 8 hours and it's going to get done. You can't just that probably makes no sense. But you have to. It's all or nothing. You can't treat your way to tolerant bees. He kept making the distinction that they're not resistant, they're tolerant. Hey, I'll take that. I'll take tolerant. That's fine with me. They're going to tolerate them being in there. I'm not under the illusion that any of my colonies out here are mite free. They all have them, and if they can tolerate them
So
and
what
still
you're
live,
saying
that's
is
fine.
then you don't feel like that
Um,
honeybees are a learned creature. You don't think they have the ability to gain enough experience to hold the knowledge that there is a way for them to mitigate their own mite counts.
the way I see it is like this: if a colony can't survive, they die. There's no there's no keeping the weak ones around to keep watering down your
That's well
survivors,
said.
at least in my area. Or, I mean, if, yeah, you can't. I also sometimes think of the analogy of, I don't even want to get into that one. It would take too long to explain. But when you're breeding for a trait of something, you want to go to the the best things that have that trait. You don't just get a whole bunch of junk and keep it all alive. Um, yeah, I don't know how to explain a lot of the analogies that go in my
So
head,
a
but
friend of mine put it like this: do you have animals in your home, like a dog or a cat?
I do. I have dogs. I have dogs. I have chickens. A rabbit. I know
Well,
what's coming, but I'll let you go ahead
that
and finish it.
I love that you
I've
know
been
what's
doing this a
coming.
little while.
So you don't mitigate any pests on your animals at home, even your birds with diatomaceous earth and into their little dust pockets or anything.
Well, let's go with the dogs because my chickens are very much like my bees. They get let out in the morning. They're out all day. They eat. They could get eaten by a fox or something. They don't. They come back. They produce something for me. But let's go with the dogs because dogs are not, number one, I'm not breeding dogs. My dogs don't freely mate with other dogs. They're fixed, actually. Plus, the most important thing is they're beloved members of my family. So I would treat my dog for worms, fleas, ticks, whatever, the same way that I would take my kid to the hospital, because my dogs aren't wild animals. There's no need to, I'm not selecting for mite free dog, flea free dogs or worm free dogs. So that's part of it. I mean, that should be the clearest answer to that. Bees are wild animals. And also, if I don't treat the coyotes or the wolves, I don't have wolves around me, but I don't treat coyotes. No one treats coyotes for anything. They're in no danger of being extinct. Their populations go up and down. They're everywhere.
That's a very
That's the big difference. If I had horses, it might be the same thing. I would treat my horses. That's because my horses are not open bred with everyone else's horses. Now, if I had a herd of cattle or something, would I breed from my worst cattle, the ones that produce the least milk or the skinniest, boniest bone structures and just terribly unhealthy? I would never want to breed from those. I would go to the best every time, the ones that show the trait that I want. And the only trait that I ask for in my bees is survival of all comers. I don't care what it is. And I've never failed to have that. I don't know what's so hard about it. It's easy.
I love that. Such a poetic
It's
answer.
really
There is
easy.
certainly a reason why we've become connected. That's definitely appreciated. This will I am certainly headed towards a treatment free relationship with my bees as well. But I'm probing so much because nobody understands treatment, or very few people understand treatment or even being treatment free. So I feel the more we know, the better choices we get to make for our specific apiary. To me, bees are a part of my extended family. Most the animals in my life are rescued, and I wish I could say that about bee swarms too. But to me, I would like to mitigate their mite count and give them that little human assistance to allow them to fight better the elements that are thrown their way. We're taking these European bees and expecting them to survive in a non-native land. So to me, I just want to, I would like to naturally help them along their way, whether it's with grooming techniques. Like if I could sit there and teach every bee grooming techniques, that would be, I guess, the really the best way. Just pull that mite right off your friend and toss it out of the hive. Make sure you chomp its head off first so that it can't go next door.
I mean, ultimately, you can do whatever you want to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but my feeling is Uh, when you can help something to the point where you're in the long run hurting it, and wild animals, that's always the case. That's why you shouldn't feed ducks, bread. That's why you shouldn't feed wild animals on purpose. Anytime you try to help them with stuff, you end up screwing them over in the long run. And saving the bees by, considering them so close to you as a family member and fighting their battles for them, you're just selecting for bees that depend on you in the long run. No one person is going to change the whole species or ruin it, so I'm not under any illusion that since my yard and my area surrounding it is benefiting from this, that now the world, the whole country's bees are better. I can just do what I like to do. And I can tell you that when you just acquire free bees, enjoy beekeeping, let them do what they're supposed to do on their own, you're not hurting them. You're just allowing selection, which you should know very much about, continue in the direction it's supposed to, which is they're trying to adapt their way around this pest. And as far as it being a foreign bee in America, it's been here 400 or so years. There's been thousands of other uh, insects and organisms from other countries come here and do perfectly fine with no one saving them. Lanternfly is one. The spotted lanternfly is one good example. They came all the way from China, I guess. There's no one helping them,
Far too good of a
and they're
job.
doing pretty good, and from their point of view. Yeah, and look at any wild animal. Look at any feral animal that has gotten wild. Look at feral pigs. No one tries to save the feral pigs. They
Right.
purposely try to murder as many as they can. And where are they going? They're getting no shots for any type of pig diseases. They're not getting dewormed. They're totally destroying everything. And from their point of view, that's great. Um, how many other ones are there? I mean, there's plenty of feral animals, and bees are the same thing. They thrive on neglect. I know this just from all the trees that I know that have colonies in them. There's no one in there that can do. No one does anything for them, and I'm constantly going to these
I
spots
would
every year to get
love,
the swarms they spit out.
love a matching trunk hive like the one in your most recent trunk hive video. That was video poetry. It was just beautiful. I was really um, envious of your hive. And of course, I wouldn't want to make one because being natural and allowing bees their own way is important to me too, as I sit here and talk about treatments. But I would make sure to find it, not create it. It just looks super cool, and I think that that hive really will overwinter in the most natural way that we'll be surprised by. I think human beings in general. Yeah, it looks super cool.
Yeah, I love that thing. I, it's cool, and also you bring up log hives. It's cool when you can find a see that tree was coming down. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was coming down.
Right.
They cared about the bees, so they didn't want them to die. They couldn't just be left in place, so it had to come down. So I'm glad they called me. But I think that when you take a regular log and you just
Right.
hollow it out and you dump bees into it, it's not the same. It's not even close to the same. When you look down into that thing or up into it from the bottom, it's so different from just a hollowed out tube. It's all it's all jaggedy and has compartments and all kinds of weird stuff in there. And it's thick. It's really thick. And
Yeah, that makes
yeah, it's
sense.
just not the same
And
as hollowing out
of
a log.
course, we
Um,
Americans always want to buy a beautifully perfect white box to make our yards look symmetrical and beautiful. So most people wouldn't choose to just grab a log and stick some bees in it. I guess that's a good thing for people who care about the environment and not messing with ecology. Of course.
Yeah, I mean, I use the boxes. I use them just because they're easy. They've been used for over 100 years. They're not new. I see a lot of layins using and top bars, and they're fine too. I don't really like them. I've tried to inspect them, and they're always a pain for me. But I can use the regular old box. Some people try to make up reasons why it doesn't work, why it's so bad for the bees and all that stuff, but they live in them. They survive in them. Maybe up north you might want to have thicker boxes, but here they're fine. Anything more south than here, I'm sure they're fine.
Yes.
But I also have a barrel colony. It's in a barrel where bees been in that for like 40 years,
I think it's
and
awesome.
I'm not
I
tearing
love
it
it.
apart. I'm
I
leaving
would
them in there.
certainly,
And
had I acreage, which I don't, I would certainly allow for some really cool hives to happen. So thanks for letting me enjoy yours and sharing them, of course.
yeah, anytime. Um, yeah, I'm just waiting for that thing to swarm in the spring. Holy moly, that thing's gonna be huge.
Nothing
It's
wrong
gonna
with
be
that.
probably 15 pounds. It's so full of bees, they're busting
Yeah, I
out the
love this.
front
This
even in the
turned
cold.
very poetic, and it's not something I expected. I really expected for you and I to have a biological exchange of, this is what's in the inside of a bee's body and how it works, and then you would say this is why I don't treat because of this biological aspect, and it just turned very philosophical and poetic, and I definitely appreciate that aspect, and I think that the people listening that I know will definitely appreciate that aspect.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I really I get bored right to sleep listening to most people talk about bees when they get too explainy about, the innards of a bee, or just, commercial beekeeping, or I don't know. I listen to other podcasts, and they have to get me right away in the first minute or two with something interesting. I can't make myself care about almond pollination, or all kinds of instructional podcasts are just totally boring. Yeah. This one here, the one that I do, my humble little podcast here, is just talking about either keeping bees without treatments or dealing with people who like to bash people who keep bees without treatments. Not too many of them will
Right.
take up my offer to come on here and be answered,
It will definitely happen
but
eventually.
it'll happen eventually.
Someone just popped into my head right off the bat, somebody who likes to talk. So I just like to state that you asked me if I currently treat my bees, and I said yes. And that is solely because I have been bullied into treating because of my mite counts. So at the moment, I mentioned I'm maintaining two apiaries, looking for a third on my own property. Both of my apiaries, one of them is my professional apiary. I feel like I have to, that means where I teach my beekeeping
What does that
classes.
mean?
So that's my professional beekeeping. It's on
Okay.
the college property, and the exchange there is, for education purposes, and they certainly aren't going to want to lose bees to varroa. So I'm sort of forced into treating there, especially since it has not always been solely mine. It is the previous apiary manager was a no holds barred treat religiously twice a year, and do mite counts, and he even treated with antibiotics and some antifungals and stuff like that a few times as well. Sure.
Can I ask you this? The
Yeah,
colonies that you
absolutely.
treat,
The rate has not
do colonies
changed
still die?
because I have a nice control that in the same location, I have a personal apiary, a friend's 50 acres, and her and I are working together to teach her beekeeping. And for our first year, we were completely treatment free, and we lost colonies. She and her husband were devastated. So now we're all about treat, and we're still losing the same amount of colonies. And that's my selling point. My selling point is if we're losing just as many colonies by treating, then why wouldn't we then be treatment free, since that's better for the whole idea of ecology and sustainability, making the world a better place than what we came into it. But I don't have that luxury because both places are inundated with other people's opinions, even though they're not a beekeeper or even have any idea of insect biology. So when I get my own personal apiary, then I will certainly look into letting natural selection take its course and allow the bees to do what they do best, because that's what I like to watch anyway. That's the reason why I do this.
Okay. You said a word that I kind of struggle explaining to people. When on my yard, bees are being selected for survival, and they could die of a dozen things, but I'm not stupid. I'm sure the majority of the deaths are going to be from varroa mites or whatever they have, and that's fine with me. But it's not natural selection. It's selection.
Not
But
fair.
natural selection is what happens in the forest without people meddling in them. Okay, so I try to not confuse natural select. Natural selection leads to evolving. That's why it's evolution by natural selection. That should always be said as one big block. You shouldn't say evolution by itself. Shouldn't say it by itself. It should always say evolution by natural selection, because you can't get evolution by artificial selection. Um, so that's what I'd like to point out. It's not natural selection. It is selection, because we're selecting not only for survival, but bees that can live in a box, and bees that can live in this area, and bees that, every little thing that will stay when you inspect them. They're tiny things that aren't that important, but there is a difference between those things. So you want to keep your bees without treatments and allow selection for
Well
survival to
said
take its course. That's
and
your plan.
fair. Definitely, that we'll take the natural word out of it, and yes, just selection, and let them find their own way and be bees.
Yeah, they'll find their own way, but that doesn't mean it can't be fun, and that it should cost money. I hope that if we're kind of best buds now, so maybe I can try to point you in the direction of getting freebies, and I now know where you are. So when I get all those swarm
Yeah, for
calls in the
sure.
spring, I'll just call you up, say, here's some more free bees. I really try to remove the stress from it, that worrying, that, oh my God, what if I have 10 now and I only have two in the spring? It's like, so what?
Exactly.
Now you have the two best instead of the eight. You don't know which ones are the best because you treated them all. None of them are survivors. You don't really know which ones are good. So what do? Go for the one that, like, well, how do you even pick now? You have a bunch of treated bees. It doesn't make sense. To me, it's, yeah, take that big hit, but know that bees are free. Know that splitting can increase your numbers really quickly. I mean, I can make 10 colonies out of two or three pretty easily. Anybody can. This idea that you have to keep everyone alive and fight every battle, it's just really, it would depress me. I mean, and I'm depressed enough half the
Wow,
time.
I like
I
that
couldn't
too.
deal with that much extra worrying. I have 100 or so colonies right now, and I kind of need at least 50 to die on me so that I have
Cool.
that empty equipment, because I want to chase swarms in the spring again. Nothing would horrify me more than going into winter with 100 and coming out with 95 or so these people say that have 5% deaths of their colonies. I would be horrified to have 95 colonies on April
Right.
1st, knowing that they're going to be swarming in a couple weeks. It would just be mayhem here. So I'll be happy to have 40, 50 maybe, but 40 would be even better. Then I can just split like crazy, sell a bunch of nukes, and chase as many swarms as I want to, fill up all my boxes again, and do it again. And know that I didn't make one single contribution to bullshit genetics in my area or to the people who get bees from me. Not one single contribution, because my bees, I punish them. I let them get punished by everything, and only the very best live. And at least I have one mite count now, so I'll know if this one, if it survives. If in the forums I'm constantly seeing people say, "Oh my God, a mite count of 15, they're doomed. They're walking dead. You need to treat them or they're gonna die." If I have this evidence of a 52 mite count colony surviving, and on YouTube and for everyone to see, they basically have to shut up at that point, because bees can hopefully live with that. My luck, they'll just die like in December, and it'll be funny, but I don't care, because I have plenty of other colonies that are doing well.
Yeah, thanks. Me too. You
So I'm excited for you in the
really
spring.
Like I said, I was really hoping for just sort of an exchange of information, and you even opened my brain to think about different things, because in biology we should only be observing, and I really like that whole mantra and mindset. And if I can pass that on to one person, then I've definitely done my job. And you've really helped me kind of round out an idea, because it's hard for me to sell that I would like to be a treatment beekeeper to someone who says, or, as a collective, of course, more bees, more honey, more bees, more honey, more bees, more honey. And my goal is purely just observation and, learning.
Yeah, and enjoying bees. You're going to get honey no matter what. I hate dealing with honey. I don't have intentional production colonies. It usually is just some bees that I have out here at this apiary, and I don't get to them as much, so I just stack boxes on top, and then I get stuck with all this honey. Or even at my place, I just won't get around to splitting them, and it's not the right time. Just, the year swarming's over, so I'll just start stacking boxes on, and I'll have a few production colonies, but I wouldn't even call them production colonies. They're just colonies that have a ton of honey in them that I'll take later, begrudgingly, because I really don't like spinning honey and dealing with it. It's a mess. So honey's going to come no matter what. And then if some of these colonies die, they'll have honey on them.
Isn't that true?
Honey tastes the same whether it's from dead bees or alive bees. It is. It's the same. Right. Unless I was feeding them. I don't want to extract a bunch of syrup, but I know my outyards never get fed. I don't take sugar to bees, and I only feed here at home.
I am fortunate enough,
and it's not that much.
Professionally, the goals of the apiary is just education. So it's really to understand bees as a ecological engineer, and to continue to find the best practices in beekeeping. So I do feel fortunate that I have that luxury and, dare I say, freedom. No one in my life is overly worried about amounts of honey production.
Yeah, I guess I would struggle to teach, honeybees in ecology, considering they're not really native or supposed to be part of the ecology. And then best practices also, that's going to vary depending on what your goals are. My best practice for everything to be sustainable, which is another word people like to throw around a lot, is that it doesn't cost me any money at all, and that I have all the bees that I ever want. So all I do is put a little effort into getting the free bees. And then if some bee person says it's not sustainable, what do they even mean by that? What does that mean? Do they think that if I lose 7 out of 10 colonies, that's not sustainable?
Exactly.
Well, if they think that, then they don't know what the word sustain means, because I can because I can
And
easily
when
turn 3
we're
back into
talking about
10. I mean,
sustainability, especially when it
they
pertains
don't.
to ecology, sustainability is supposed to be the phenomenon of leaving the world a better place than which we found it. So when we found the world being born, we should make it a better place in our lifetime than where we first started. So it's not supposed to be all about numbers or survivability of bees. In this case, it's really supposed to be making the world a better place. So in this case, you and I are talking about having a treatment free beekeeping style. That's sustainability, because I came into the world of beekeeping treating, being bullied into treating, not understanding enough to feel comfortable being treatment free. And then if I leave the beekeeping world, which will be when I die, not treating, that's sustainability to me.
Yeah, or even for me, it's not even making it a better place. It's just making it a not worse place. And treating is always going to lead to worse, worse situation, because not only are you fighting the bees battle for them, and selecting for you're selecting more and more every time for bees that are fighting less, but at the exact same time you're treating mites and you're killing 95% and you're leaving the 5% of the best. It's like a double
And we're
whammy of
weakening
what
our
you're
bees
doing
in the
to the
meantime.
whole bee species. Uh, yeah, I mean, it should be the other way around. We should be knocking the bee population down to the strongest and then letting it build back up, just like we do the way people do with mites. But most of these people who do this have no concept of ecology, biology, selection. They don't know anything about that. They think they do, but they're just all they're thinking about is the commercial beekeeping industry all the time. That's their problem. I don't. The Mite Beekeeping podcast is not concerned about the commercial beekeeping industry. I don't
Well,
even eat almonds. Okay,
you can't use the
um,
honey from almond production anyway. So
and there's plenty other bees. I heard that. Yeah, I mean, I don't. And if bees are in such trouble and they're in such shortage, then why why are people taking bees to almonds and then having to dump them off?
exactly.
They make so much money there. They don't even want to bring them back. They just want to dump them off to everybody so they can make packages and then flood
Well,
everybody with all
bees
this
are in
crap.
trouble. Let's not take
I mean,
anything
how are
away
these
from
bees in
that.
trouble?
Not
I mean, I
honeybees.
don't,
Our native species are
not honeybees.
possibly
Yeah,
could be
right.
because of trying to keep honeybees. Well, not the whole reason. I'm sorry. Don't get that misconstrued. But that could be part of the problem. But really, it's not our honeybees that are in trouble. We just appreciate them, and I will use that word again because I'm going to stand by it, of them being an ecosystem engineer. Sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they do engineer the ecosystem by and because of what they do. What I meant was, I think what I said before was just they're not. I don't know. I don't know. When I think of an ecosystem, like my favorite ecosystems are like pond ecosystems or water. I just find that the most interesting. Um, and then I think with honeybees, they maybe just because they're not native. I don't know. Like, do we consider feral hogs? They're in the ecosystem,
Yeah.
but I guess you're right. Yeah, they would be an ecosystem engineer too, right? The way they root
Well,
things up and
and
tear
they're giving
everything
us
down. So yeah,
a
they
food
can
source
affect
in
the
that
ecosystem
case. It's
definitely.
open season on wild boar every Wednesday in Louisiana. Well, in New Orleans specifically, I don't know.
Oh, is it? I thought you could just kill those
I
anytime
know here
of
in
any
Pennsylvania
year.
we have open
I
season
thought
on
they were
coyote
just such a problem you could
all
kill them
year
at
round,
any
right?
time.
Yeah. I'm not a hunter
I
either.
don't
In
know.
fact,
I
I'm
don't know. I've
half
never hunted
vegetarian,
in my
but
life.
just those weird things that we know about animals. But I know specifically in New Orleans, it's open season every Wednesday. But again, I don't know about the whole state. But I used to know why they specifically chose only one day a week for that, but I don't remember what it is right now. Probably has something to do with population.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, it just also goes to show, I mean, there's two animals you just named that are hunted. If it's open season, coyote every day, all year, and we still have coyotes. And then
Right.
feral hogs you can hunt every Wednesday, I guess, and they're still everywhere. You can't capture a coyote or a feral hog and take care of it in a cage or in a nice big pen, feed it, take care of all of its things, and then breed a couple generations of that, and then release that offspring into the wild and expect it to do any good. That's what's getting done with bees.
Yeah.
And it surprises people. I don't know why.
I did look up while we were chatting coyotes just to be safe, because I know people could take that quite literally. And they consider it not open season on coyotes year around, but it's no closed season, which means inside of any big game season, a hunting license or a fur taker license can take a coyote even without wearing orange.
Okay. There
A
you go.
coyote?
I mean, I have seen one
Oh,
in
I
my
have
life,
seen
my whole
many,
lifetime.
but I'm a
But I
very
know they're out there.
outdoorsy human
Yeah.
being, and I often go into forests, just me, so that I can see nature undisturbed. If there's more than one person, then animals tend to know that we're there before they do, before we know they're there.
Yeah, I saw one on the way to work,
No, I see them
running across the road.
all
That
the
was
time,
that was the only
especially
time
where
I
I'm
ever
at
saw one.
now, being in the Pocono Mountains, which is northeastern Pennsylvania, just above you. And the game around here is pretty large size compared to where I came from, which is over in the western part of Pennsylvania, what they call the Pennsylvania Wilds. The animals are much smaller there than they are over here in the Pocono Mountains.
Interesting. So let me see. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about bees and not treating? I hate to always say treatment free all the time. It just sounds. I was thinking about it. I like pure survival of bees. I don't like to always keep saying treatment free, because or if someone might say there's treatment free bees. There's no treatment free bees. There's beekeepers that do not treat their bees, and then they have the result of
Good
that.
survival.
So I'm gonna not be saying treatment free too much. But what else were you thinking about?
No, I'm here. Survival of the fittest.
I think I'm losing you here on
Treatment
the
free. I
microphone.
really appreciate your
Okay.
open-ended discussion, and really opened my mind to a few things that I never even really considered before, and definitely helped me in my direction. I'd really like to show my students both the treatment world and the pure selection. No, what'd you say? Pure survival world. And this has definitely helped me along in that journey.
Yeah.
I know that
yeah.
I myself will review this podcast back, and anybody who listens to it can at least learn something. And that is definitely appreciated.
Okay. Yeah. Just remember, when you're teaching your students, just the big thing for me is let them know there's an option besides buying bees all the time. There's just you can't buy the best bees. They're not for sale. They're in your woods, and they're coming out of people's barns, and they're even coming out of other people's hives. They're still free. That's the number one thing that all of us say all the time. Me, Solomon, everyone says we're trying to get that out to people that having freebies you're not always going to get the best all the time. But at least you don't have that fear of losing an investment. And at least you're not contributing to bringing in Florida bees, Georgia bees. It's like a double whammy again. They're free and
Right.
you're not introducing non-acclimated bees. So then everything you
Hey,
get
who
on
doesn't
top
like
of that is
frosting?
all frosting, really. I mean, everybody does. It's the best. And here's the funny thing I was thinking of too. I was telling the inspector that was here, there's a bee tree here that's in my area. It's up. I mean, the location will mean nothing. It's by Alvernia College. It's a big, gigantic sycamore tree. It's hollow. I've been getting swarms out of it every year for 4 years now. It's the same. It has not died in all 4 years that I've been going there. And for some reason, they overwinter in this tree every time. But when I get a swarm out of that tree, they haven't survived for me here. So even if you have the fearless bees there are, they're gonna throw you curveballs. I've gotten swarms out of that thing. They've done great, and then they just died. And then I've caught colonies that had a marked queen, and in just an area where there's no feral bees, it's just beekeepers. And I've expected them to die, and they just live. So they're always throwing curveballs at you. But as long as I just let them ride, and just as I've been telling you, at least I'm not contributing to bad genetics. So yeah, let your students know that you do not have to buy bees. Just look up swarm trapping, swarm catching, get your name out there. I do have a podcast episode on here called Acquiring Swarms. It's like one of my early ones where I talk about what I do, and it's how I got 100 swarms, 100 plus this season. I was turning them down, passing them out to people, posting them all over the place. Someone go get this. I can't take anymore. And if I can get 100, like I always tell people, you can absolutely get 2 or 3 or whatever number you want to keep in your yard, because it's just too easy. These bees, honeybees, aren't
Right.
scarce, not in Pennsylvania, at least
And
not in
like you
our
said,
area,
freebies are
where your
great.
students
You
might
can
be
get
from.
them. You can get them without having to pay for them and not take out the worry of an investment, which is really, really a drive home point here. I love that idea.
Yeah, yeah, because the clubs will really hammer you. Order your bees early before they run out, and I laugh every time I see that. I just die laughing because they never run out. If they do run out, they just go get more. They make so much money off of those packages and nukes. It's it's a pile of money. They will never run out, and you can get them all the way up till June and July if you wanted to. And all you have
Right.
to do is put the
And
effort
I will
in
expose
April and
myself
May, and,
here,
and you'll have freebies.
but it I think it needs to be said that I often to my students assimilate beehives in the bee
Mm-hmm.
world here in the United States or anywhere in the world actually to the water cycle, and that constant flow and exchange in the closed system with the water cycle is similar in the bee world with honeybees themselves, in the way that their 40 to 50-day life cycle, in the way that the queen lives for longer to ensure survivability of the colonies. And people don't really get that idea. And even myself, because I continue to fight that battle by treating and continue to fight that now, knowing that part of that cycle is buying bees. Thanks for that exposure, by the way. No, I don't mind. I'm just kidding.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Once you remove that buying part, oh my God, once you get free bees, you'll never buy bees again. You would be silly to. Um, it's so easy, and I explained it too many times. Too many people do it. Um, Next year, I really want to make sure I don't have
Well,
100 colonies again. I want to get down to a normal hobby number, but I'm going to try to fill up everybody's boxes if I can. Um, but okay, I mean,
perfect.
if that's I think we had a nice little chat here. We're coming right up on an hour. So we had a nice talk, and you're always a guest back on. Let me know about how your classes are going, if you
Okay.
changed anything.
Yeah, we're
And we'll
best
be in
homies now,
contact
so
definitely
you
in the
can call
spring
me
when I
anytime.
get a
And
couple swarm
if
calls
there's
up
any
there.
information I can add to your podcast, I will certainly do another one of these calls. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I hope your audience likes it as much as your new audience members with who I will definitely share this with. And give me a call anytime. Take care.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you. Casie Berkhouse.